Hey everyone, Geophysicist Stefan Burns here with some breaking news. There are just now reports coming in of a powerful cosmic signal being received here on Earth from 24,000 light years away from Cygnus X-3, a binary system that often does these sort of giant radio flares out of the constellation of Cygnus, or the Swan constellation. This is quite a notable microquasar. Most astronomers know of Cygnus X-3, and this giant radio flare that we're receiving just started today, April 6th, the day after Easter, so Easter Monday for those that celebrate. And this is a powerful signal. It's in the gigahertz range, which is the same frequency band as our Wi-Fi, as our cellular signals. It's able to cut through the atmosphere and actually reach us here at the surface. So this is quite notable. And what's really interesting about this is, in fact, we had a similar giant radio flare from Cygnus X-3 back in the middle of January. So that was quite notable because there hadn't been one for quite some time. Now we received two effectively back to back within a few months of each other, and right in the middle of that time period, from middle of January up to now, we had the great conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. And this entire story here paints a pretty broad picture as to how this celestial and cosmic energy is influencing events here on Earth and altering our state of consciousness. Because what we saw with the first giant radio flare from Cygnus X-3, specifically from the 17th to the 20th of January 2026, when it was the strongest, was a perfect overlap with an extremely anomalous signal in the Schumann Resonances. This giant radio flare now, April 6th, is just starting up. We'll have to keep track to see if we see anything anomalous in the Schumann Resonances appear this time, though the planetary configuration is different. Cygnus X-3 being located up in the northern hemisphere in the constellation of Cygnus. Well, when that popped off in mid-January, we had the planet mostly tilted towards the northern hemisphere in that constellation. So specifically, some of our Schumann observatories there were able to get a really good alignment with that signal. Now that's April, we're now starting to flip further towards the southern hemisphere, you could say, right? The whole planet is tilting a little bit differently. So we may not see that signal, but this is painting a story of how a lot of what we've gone through over the past few months is coming to a bit of a conclusion, and we're at this choice point right now of where to go next, because there's a whole archetypal story here. But before we get into that, let's look more at this data. Let me just show you where I got this report. This is the Astronomer's Telegram, and it's the perfect place to look for when there's some sort of nova event or a binary outburst like this, or an X-ray transient, things of this nature. So I check this quite often. New giant radio flare of microquasar Cygnus X-3. We carry out the multi-frequency monitoring of the galactic microquasars with the Raton 600 radio telescope, and on the 6th of April today, 2026, we detected the giant flare from the microquasar at frequencies 4.7 to 30 gigahertz. That perfectly overlaps with the frequencies that 4G and 5G cellular signals use, FYI. Those gigahertz frequencies are absorbed into the body very easily due to the electric susceptibility of water, FYI, the more you know. It was the first increase of radio emission for Cygnus X-3 since the 22nd of February, when they detected a small flare at frequencies 1.24 to 11.2 gigahertz. Now, there was a giant radio flare back on the 17th of January, really 16th through the 20th of January. Then we had this tiny flare, radio flare, from Cygnus X-3 on the 22nd of February, 2 days after the great Saturn-Neptune conjunction, but well within that conjunction period, pretty much. And now, about 6 weeks after that, we are now seeing a giant radio flare from Cygnus X-3 again. So perfect timing with giant radio flares from Cygnus X-3 around this planetary event in our system, 24,000 light years away. That's pretty crazy. During the last few weeks, the microquasar has shown very low radio fluxes, less than 30 millijoules at 4.7 gigahertz, and then often dropping down to detection levels of 3 to 5 millijoules. Today, the flux increased to 6.6 joules at 11.2 gigahertz. And so it's just been much higher. The probability of radio flux increasing is quite high over the next few days. And there could also be X-ray emissions from this, gamma ray emissions, millimeter wavelengths. All of those are probably also hitting our planet, but we do have data for the giant radio flare, and specifically those gigahertz frequencies coming in. I can show you that right here. We see the data that they published. We see our frequency there on the bottom in gigahertz. So we see it really starting up around 4 to 5 gigahertz. Again, it is 4.7 gigahertz. And here we see our flux density, and really highest right around, I guess, 11 gigahertz there. And this is in millijoules. So this would be 6.4 joules effectively. And often, as they said, it's like down at 3 or 5 or maybe 30. So this is a huge increase over normal as it relates to Cygnus X-3 with these giant radio flares. And we can see that it did this in the past as well. So here we have the data going back to January of this year. This is January 16th. This is where they did not get any detection. This is a different group. The 3 links for these are right there. They'll also be linked in the video description. Here again is where they got a no detection of radio flux at 1.4 gigahertz for Cygnus X-3. But on the 16th, it started to go up. We see our flux density there again, millijoules, so 2,000 or 2 joules. And then it went right up to over 6,000. This is the 17th, 18th, and 19th of January. And again, that's exactly when we saw this extremely bizarre frequency signal in the Schumann Resonances. It is exact perfect timing, which is crazy. Then there is this decay. We see more data here, a longer time frame right here, where we see the data here was hovering around 100 millijoules, sometimes going a little higher, but then dropping, and then it got this burst up. So we often see this reduction in the gigahertz frequency emissions, these radio frequency emissions from Cygnus X-3, this microquasar, before it shoots up again. And here we can see what it looked like in the days before, and then on the 16th of January right there, we see that all of a sudden there was this enhancement of these frequencies. Now, if we look at our Schumann resonances as observed out of Tomsk, Russia, where we saw these unusual signals before, well, we don't see any yet. We do have a big Schumann burst right here, created from local atmospheric activity. Think rain, thunder, snow. That's what that is. But we're not seeing that distinctive signature that we saw last January, and we very well may not, again, because of the tilt angle inclination of the Earth. So before, the northern hemisphere, specifically like that Arctic Circle area, was really nicely aligned with Cygnus, and there wasn't really any daylight being experienced for a lot of parts, most parts of the globe. So it was able to receive these signals pretty much continuously without there being any interference from solar signals. Now, because it is April, the tilt angle relative to these constellations is different, and so Tomsk, Russia, is now further down, closer to the Sun-Earth ecliptic plane than it was before. So we may not detect it this time from that observatory, but it probably, regardless, is that energy coming in, and we just would need an observatory at the right location to pick it up. That would be my guess. Now, let's look at the sky map for this so we can start to understand the larger synchronicity that is at play here, okay? Because this is a cool astronomical event. To learn about giant radio flares is awesome. And that's definitely great enough, but there's a lot more to this story if you can learn to read into it a little bit. And just before we do that, I should show you, here's a depiction of this binary system for Cygnus. And that's one key thing. It's a binary system. 2. The number 2 in binaries is the big theme right now. But the idea is that there's a host star, and then there's either like a white dwarf or a black hole that pulls in material, and then when it gets close enough, it flares out, creating this pulse of energy that's able to be received at Earth 24,000 light years away. So we have here our sky map. This is via Stellarium, and we see the Swan constellation right here. Let me type in specifically Cygnus X-3. It's probably actually, yeah, so I'll have to type it in. Cygnus X-3, and we'll get to pop up. Here it is. So we see it right there where this giant radio flare is coming in from. And let's go back to January 17th, which is when this flare was the strongest earlier. And look at the crazy grouping of planets that we had. We had this huge convergence of planets. We had Mercury, Mars, Venus, all effectively like in a triple cazimi with Jupiter on the other side. So that was quite wild. And we see that basically the longitude of this is pretty similar. It's almost smack dab on it. So that's pretty crazy too as well. You can see that it was higher up in the night sky at the time. So it's really coming straight down. This signal is coming straight down. But if we look over here, and we'll move forward our time, let's see where Jupiter is, because Jupiter is connected to the constellation of Cygnus. It's known as the Swan constellation. There is a Greek myth involving Jupiter as a swan, and we'll get to that. But we see Jupiter here in the constellation of Gemini, which is the twins. So you have Castor and Pollux, and they are two of the twins related to this myth of Jupiter and him being a swan and, you know, creating the immortal twins. So we see Jupiter right there back on the 17th of January. If we go to April 6th today, we will see that Jupiter is still in the constellation of Gemini right there. So it has not left the constellation of Gemini yet. It's still in that position for this to be archetypally resonant. And all this cosmic information that we're receiving right now from Cygnus X-3, from our constellations, from our planets, perhaps all of these are clues as to a larger story that's unfolding right now here on planet Earth as it relates to us, our biology, our consciousness, the future trajectory of our planet, the sun, the solar system, and also just the expression of energy and consciousness across the entire galaxy. The ancients called this part of the sky Cygnus, the swan. According to Greek legend, Zeus, the planet Jupiter, transformed into a swan to visit Queen Leta of Sparta. Their union resulted in the birth of 4 twins, 2 female, 2 male. 2 immortal via Zeus and 2 mortal via the king of Sparta. One twin, Pollux, was immortal, sired by Zeus himself. The other, Castor, was mortal, sired by the human king. These twins eventually became the stars of Gemini, as Zeus granted them both immortality in the heavens. Look at the sky right now. Jupiter is currently transiting through the constellation of Gemini. As a binary system flares from within the Swan constellation with record-breaking energy, the planet of kings Jupiter, along with Interstellar 3I Atlas, is sitting in the constellation of the Twins. This is the tether of meaning, the synchronicity. It suggests a theme of conception, the arrival of a new frequency that is being birthed into our local reality. We are currently seeing a global duality. Much like the twins of Gemini, one mortal, one immortal, humanity is splitting into 2 different expressions. One side is anchored in the mortal or old world structures of fear, control, greed, material limitation. The other is reaching for the immortal or higher frequency potential of sovereignty, intuition, and cosmic connection. So while Cygnus X-3 is shouting from across the galaxy, our own solar system is holding its breath. What will we choose? The signal from Cygnus X-3 is the heads up, a massive injection of energy intended to catalyze our choice. It is the birth of what many call a new kingly energy, a shift in how we lead ourselves and how we perceive our place in the universe. This is the giant radio flare that we are experiencing right now. It is a literal explosion of interstellar information and energy vibrating at frequencies that match our own Wi-Fi and cellular signals, cutting through Earth's atmosphere to reach us here at the surface. When the galaxy flares, our nervous system feels it. There is an actual physical interaction between this microquasar 24,000 light years away and our own atmosphere and us. The Earth is not just an isolated rock flying through space, it is a resonant cavity, a catcher's mitt for cosmic frequencies streaming in across the galaxy. Between the surface of the planet and the ionosphere, that electrically charged layer, the upper atmosphere, there is a space that hums. The Schumann Resonances, the heartbeat of the Earth, exist here. These extremely low frequency ELF waves are usually excited by lightning strikes, but they're also sensitive to space weather, solar flares, planetary alignments, cosmic outbursts. As the frequencies from Cygnus X-3 strike our ionosphere, they compress it. This compression alters the geometry of Earth's resonant cavity. And if you think of Earth as a musical instrument, this swan signal is a new cosmic hand tuning the strings. Our own brainwaves, heart rhythms, the nervous system, the entire biofield is entrained to these global frequencies. When the cavity's resonance shifts, our internal state shifts. This may explain why many people feel a sense of acceleration or strange buzzing exhaustion during these events. The human body and mind was acting as the final receiver for a message that was too subtle for our technology and machines. The final question is, now that you've received the message, what will you do with it? Thank you all so much, everybody. I've been your host, Stefan Burns. If you found this video valuable, if it resonated with you, then please click that thumbs up button to help share this channel and this video with a wider audience. Subscribe if you like to stay up to date on what is happening here with the Earth, the Sun, the cosmos, consciousness, and more. I release videos almost daily. And really, this is a decision point for us. Every single moment is a decision point. Some decisions are fairly mundane and they're not that big of a deal. Do you do this? Do you do that? Others are more impactful, but there's also an aspect of how decisions add up. So make sure you're making the right decisions as often as you can, as guided by consciousness and higher spirit to help just improve your life, your community, and also make the planet a more beautiful place for everybody. So thank you all, wishing you well, and I'll see you all very soon.